So we've just hit around 12:03. We have a really jammed packed presentation with a lot of great content and insight from Justin. So we're going to get started and people could just keep joining in as time goes on. So just to start, I just want to say hi, my name is Liz, kind of been chatting with you all since you've joined. I'm on the marketing team here at Rose Rocket. And I'm really excited for this presentation by our co-founder and chief strategy officer, Justin Bailey. Just before we jump into the content, I just wanted to let you know a few housekeeping rules. So at the end of the presentation, Justin will be answering questions. To ask a question, please put it in the Q&A box. You should find that at the bottom of your Zoom controls. It should say Q&A. Feel free to enter your questions throughout the presentation. He'll answer them all at the end as well. Feel free to use the chat function. You're able to toggle the chat to be to everyone by saying panelists and attendees, or just to Justin and I by selecting panelists. But if you have any thoughts about what's being presented, would love to hear them in the chat. So moving on to our agenda. Oops, sorry, I skipped a slide. Agenda for the day. We have we're going to start with your business, hiring and pay, your salesperson at work, some final thoughts from Justin, and then our Q&A. So without further ado, I would like to call up Justin to introduce himself and get the show on the road.
Thank you, Liz. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. So a couple quick things. I do have a lawn care crew outside the house that I can hear in the front yard. So don't mind if there's some interruption from lawnmowers and what have you. It won't be long. They just pass by this window. So just a heads up that might be coming. As Liz had mentioned, my name is Justin. I am one of the co-founders here at Rose Rocket. And this is a presentation I'm really excited to give because this is probably my favorite topic, maybe not hiring salespeople specifically, but certainly sales in general and sales as it pertains to transportation services. So, we are talking about hiring salespeople, but this is a highly focused, I would say specifically focused around brokerage and asset-based carrier salespeople. My experience in the space is prior to founding Rose Rocket or co-founding it. I worked in as a transportation consultant, self-employed, owned a brokerage, sold that brokerage. And, sort of collectively in my career, I was thinking about this before the presentation. I've done probably about 40, maybe 45 million in sales total. So that's the contracts that I've written. So I say that not to impress you, but just to impress upon you that I do have a lot of experience doing this. I've probably hired upwards of 30 salespeople, probably fired 15. And so I do have some reps in this space, and this is a big conversation, and trying to package this all in a one size fits all is not easy to do. So this is a general framework. I do not pretend to be an absolute expert in your specific line of business. What hoping today is give you some nuggets that will be useful for you. And I am available for questions just in general. If you ever would like to reach out, my contact details will be at the end. I'm happy to give any guidance or insights from now until whenever that makes sense. Also, father of four, probably my most proud accomplishment as well. And you may see one of my children bombing around the background here. Not sure how my camera's pointed because I can't see myself as you typically can on a Zoom call, but you may get to know one of them. So with that, let's roll into it. So kind of quick highlight data points here. I think we probably all know this, maybe not stats specifically, but understand that trucking is phenomenally gigantic in terms of an industry, in terms of how much freight is being bought and sold and moved. I think the second point is interesting in terms of just the pure competitive landscape as it pertains specifically to 3PLs and the brokers. That is a lot of competition. And we'll talk a little bit today about how to separate ourselves from that, and how that pertains to attracting salespeople by doing that exercise. And I think this last point is really important. We're all feeling this. It's the commoditization of the industry, and the scaling of it, or the digitizing of it. So folks like you, who I think are mostly Rose Rocket customers, I think really understand the advantages of technology and the table stakes that is for your business, which is quite frankly, significantly competitive advantage, not just operationally, but for attracting talent as well. So I think we'll touch on that. But if not, kudos to you for being here today, engaging in some learning, and also making the investments in products like Rose Rocket that will help move your business forward, and quite honestly leave many behind who decide to think of technology as a cost center versus a growth mechanism. Okay, so one of the, I think, most important things that we have to understand when we are looking to hire salespeople is having a sense from our perspective in terms of what business are we in. So I'm going to speak to largely the brokers here, in that one of the hardest things to do in the space, I'm really trying to draw from my own knowledge, especially early days, is say no to business. Because at the end of the day, if you're a 3PL and somebody wants you to move something somewhere within reason, you can access the load board, you can make calls, you can say yes to pretty much anything if you so decide to do so. Now, the risk with doing that, however, is that it really does not allow you to become an expert at things. And the internet has created a world that is highly vertical in terms of buying. It's like, if you want coffee made harvested in Ethiopia 5 minutes ago, you can have that. It's the way we think about business as buyers is we want to work with people who are really good at one thing. And now what that means really is that when we're even thinking about, say, hiring salespeople, letting them know what you do and what you are great at allows them to fit into that mold, and allows you to better understand what you're looking for as well. So the wider we are, I think the shallower we are. And think about big businesses like, Amazon, even as an example. They've got every product, but there's a lot of things you wouldn't buy there. Highly specialized, highly valuable. Those are where you go to specialty shops for. So if we're going to move away from being commoditized, and we're going to move, into a place where we want to specialize, really understanding what that is to you as a business, in order to bring everything from salespeople and then to essentially bring customers in to this is what we do, is just highly accretive to your business, and it will really help drive things moving forward. But it takes the ability, especially at the beginning, as you start squeezing that niche tighter and tighter and tighter, to say no, and to say no a lot. And so this is something that takes discipline and takes conviction, but has been, from my observation, been probably one of the, if not the most important factors to driving a successful organization and bringing on salespeople that will stay, because there's alignment in what you do, and there's a clear, concise understanding of who you are and what you do. Make no mistake, this is very difficult to do. How do you do that? What is your niche? What region do you work in? What services do you provide? What are you really good at? What are you bad at? What size of customers do you want to go after? Both on the low end and both on the high end. And really, there are not, you can never stop the amount of questions you want to ask there, and that continues to squeeze the niche. So if we consider that our customers are going to be redheaded males aged 18 to 34 who live in Birmingham, Alabama, you would know exactly who you're looking for. You would know exactly who to target. You know exactly who to express to your salespeople on who to target, where to go, and what we do perfectly. That is a hyper contextual version of a squeezed niche. And so it's really trying to get down to that level where you are just laser focused on who your customers are, where your value lies, and that will allow you really to start thinking very critically about some of the types of people, skill sets experiences that you would want in that salesperson. And it's really friggin' healthy for your business. So on that point around value-based selling, what we want to think about is what is the value that you offer? And so if we think about, this dovetails from the last conversation, but selling, so hard thing to do in transportation. How do we not sell on price? Your buyers have been trained to buy on price, quite frankly, because of the deregulation created open market for pricing. I think and that's actually a point I want to make. Although transportation is very, very old, the way in which that we operate in this market today is really only about 40 years old, because this was a completely different industry in the way things were sold and brought to market pre-1981 or 8. Anyway, around there, I think we all around regulation. And so there's still I think a very immature, comparatively to what you might think, sales motion in the space. And so I think we've done a disservice in the space around relatively pretty mediocre sales efforts, teaching buyers to buy on price, and that is really challenging for us today to try to deliver value and ask people to pay more. Now, if we go back to that first point, though, about squeezing the niche, we would say, okay, well, we don't work with commodities. So I'm not going to work with salt. I'm not going to work with oil. I'm not going to work with steel or lumber or things like that. That in and of to itself gets you out of that price conversation in those, because you're saying, I'm not going to deal with people that are price driven only. That is a reality we have to face. We have to understand that there are markets and industries that move pennies, and every dollar of freight is a dollar against their landed cost. So that is a reality. But we can parse out who those people are who want to buy on service, who understand, actually we'll talk about service in a second, who understand the value of technology, who understand the value of your expertise, who understand the value of the whatever it is that you are going to do for them, whatever makes you special, whatever your best thing is. They'll pay more for that. They absolutely will. That comes down to them articulating the need that they have as a buyer, to understand what is the value, what are you willing to pay more for, which generally comes down to solving a top 2 business problem people are willing to spend money on. So oftentimes, and I'm going to do a bit of a sales coaching thing here, but again, I think this all hopefully fits. Oftentimes your buyers, your selling motion should really be around talking about business challenges, not transportation. The transportation becomes the long tail. So the question to ask yourself through this process, and this is all about developing a thesis around what type of salesperson you're looking for and why they would want to work with you. And so if the answer to your question is, what do you do better? You're probably not going to say price, although you may. And if you do that, then great, because again, you know where to go. You go after the commodity players. You do the BCC truckload stuff. BCC being, the people are blasting you with truckloads all day long and moving for the cheapest price. But if your answer is service, you got to try harder, because you can't sell service. As I wrote down here, service is a promise that you deliver after the sale. So it's basically equivalent to saying, I promise I'll do better than you're currently doing today. That's a really, really hard way to sell something. And it's really difficult for a salesperson to come into an organization and say, okay, I'm selling a promise that I don't really even know is true, that we can do the thing better than the current incumbent is doing. Really difficult. Give them something. So the portals that you guys have access to, give them technology, give them real-time tracking, give them an aggregated view of something, give them reports. There's probably another conversation, another deck altogether, but bring them value based on their needs, based on the things they're willing to pay for. And you will find salespeople put their hands up and say, I want to work here because I understand that we deliver a value that's not based on price. And that's up to them to be good at selling around that, and not based on the promise of service, which is based on you to define what actually that is, that the motion is. Oh, sorry. Okay, so all that being said, so now we understand this is what we do really well. We can articulate it to our our salespeople, our employees, whomever that is, and we're ready to do this thing. So when should you hire a salesperson? And we're going to go into this in a bunch of different pieces as we go here. But really, like, you can read these points, but the point is, can you make the investment? Do you have the money and the time to do it? And if not, maybe now isn't the right time, which is okay. Because if you're growing in a certain way, then that might be okay for now. But this is an investment. And I understand the sort of concept of bring out a commission sales rep with a book of business, and we'll talk about that. And you can do that. The risks are very, very large doing that. And I think anyone who's been in the space for a period of time, who has other businesses that they're friends with in the space who have done that, or you've done it before, to say it's a mixed bag is probably giving it a lot of credit. In my experience, and again, this isn't really data driven, but it almost never works. Is what I can say. What I've seen. Books of businesses are, from my observation, incredibly overrated. It almost never. I've never actually seen them pan out. Full stop. And I would say that full commission does come with a cost, and we'll break down actually how those costs tend to work. And in this slide here. Okay, so qualities to look for in a salesperson. This is interesting because this is shifting. So I think that throughout the pandemic, we had to learn, and I really had to learn this, how to sell inside. So from a computer, from a phone, and not have the opportunity to do the things that I do around relationship building in person. That's a totally new muscle to build. But I think what's happened more importantly, probably from the customer side, is that they're now leaning into value, and the long tail becomes the relationship. So if we think about relationship selling, it used to be come in through the back door, meet somebody, make them laugh, take them out for lunch, be generally a good guy or girl that they like to deal with, and then almost like co-create value together. Yeah, you can move some freight for me. You can do this. It's cool. I like it. That's fine. And then get some freight, and then start to kind of build the value, and the relationship would sustain the business, I guess. Because it seems to shift, and again, I think this was happening anyway, and I think just COVID really just sped this up. Is it's value first. So these are the problems I have. How can we solve that? Oh, and by the way, this company can solve my problems. They bring great value to the table, and they're actually pretty nice to deal with. And that relationship to me now becomes much more important around expansion and retention of the business. You like what we do. We've proven ourselves through value at the front end of the deal. The long tail of this now is you like working with us. What else can we do? Who else do you know? And that is really shifts the qualities you're looking for in a salesperson from being someone who is, really gregarious and, likes to just, there's all the things that you might think about in it. I think in many ways in a sort of stereotypical salesperson, I think is shifting tremendously. And the salespeople that I've seen recently who work both at Rose Rocket and some companies that I advise are not what you would think in terms of salespeople. They're more pragmatic. They're more value focused. It's more sales engineering now than really it is, again, just like sort of spray and praying and multiple sales calls and lots of activity. For the most part on this call, these are small businesses. My first job in transportation, I worked at YRC, and I can tell you right now, we were paid on activity. You do your 6 meetings a day, you get paid. Commission structure was so screwed up, I never knew how much I was making. It wasn't a lot anyway. So you weren't motivated by productivity. We're small businesses. So we need productivity. We can't get by on activity. So measuring how many calls you do, honestly, that doesn't even matter. What we need is output and outcome. So all that said, the salesperson you're looking for today is resourceful and industrious. They always have been. And that kind of blends into part number 2. They're entrepreneurial. Motivated to do a good job by their customers. I think that's self-explanatory. But I think one thing we often don't maybe think about is this is a person you want to be co-creating with and working together with and collaborating with. This is a person that you will need to invest a lot of time with to really see them succeed. And so make sure you want to be around them. And I just think that just goes for general joy of life, but also long-term sustainability. It's really difficult if you make this type of investment and after 6 months, the person leaves because of lack of training, lack of investment, lack of connection. That is really that's a fail, and that's a big risk. Your payoff isn't going to come until well after that. So we really want to make sure we're doing the things we can at the beginning, and being around people you like is obviously just pretty critical. Okay. So should I hire a salesperson from within the transportation industry? You know, from what I've seen, I have not been super impressed with the talent that generally exists inside transportation. However, the ramping period of teaching somebody who's not from the industry to teach them transportation is not small. And so I think that this is truly I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer here, to be honest. Where I've seen the most success is hiring somebody who sells to the same types of people, but isn't necessarily from transportation. So packaging has been something I've always kind of gravitated towards. Same buyer, same general price points, just a lot of similarities. Again, working with packaging people and bring them into transportation, there is still a learning curve and it's more than you might think. But there's a lot of inherent knowledge that you don't have to teach. So I think ideally, if it were me, you would hire from outside of the industry, but finding somebody who has a lot of the muscles built around who to call, how many calls, the kind of buyers they are, how to work with them, demographics, all that type of stuff. I think having someone who has that knowledge base and then teaching them what LTL is, to me, that's an investment worth making. And I've seen the best success there. I think transportation people certainly can be successful, but you have to be very careful. This industry is from my observation, there's a lot of retread going on in this space. There's a lot of people who jump company to company, who've worked at every carrier. I would stay as far away from those types as possible, my opinion. So I hate this answer, to be honest. I've tried all of the above. And I think as a small business, we need to rely on the expertise of others where available. And recruiters just happen to be a very, very well-refined, well-defined business out there. And yeah, they're expensive, but this is what we're talking about. We are talking about making an investment. So I've tried hiring salespeople from Indeed. I've tried referrals. I think whatever's available, I've probably tried it. And certainly referrals are preferable, but they're really, really hard to brute force. It's like, I want to hire a salesperson now. Forcing referrals is really difficult. So if they come along, amazing, go for it, do it. If you can, if you're in the motion to hire salespeople. Otherwise, I've had my best success, unfortunately, with recruiters. But yeah, that's going to cost you 15 grand or so. So it's real money. So if we are looking at quality candidates, and this is actually something you want to see in a candidate, you want this person interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. You want them to be considering the role. You want to have to work for this person. If someone shows up and says, I'll take it on the first interview, don't do that. People who are currently employed, who are happy in what they're doing, who are succeeding in what they're doing, but you can offer them, look, these are salespeople. It's really simple. This is the advantage you have in transportation. If you structure it right, you can pay them more than almost any industry. Their upside earnings are gigantic in this space. And so when hiring for brokerage, what I'm leaning into with these folks, I'm saying, look, I understand that you're selling packaging and you're making $125,000 a year in your commission, have a pretty easy life. What I'm looking to do is move you into a place where you're making between 300 and 500 grand over the next 3 to 5 years. I need that commitment from you over the next 3 to 5 years. but collectively we can get there. You just have to follow my lead, do the work, and we'll get there. There are not many spaces that can offer people $300,000 to $500,000 a year in commissions if they, do the job. And if you've got a good value prop, and you've got a motion that taps a market that's large enough to work with that, and these people are having success doing what they're doing, and they're motivated by money. And if they're not motivated by money, don't hire them for sales. And so I generally have very, very plain conversations around money with salespeople because I want them motivated by this. And maybe it's shallow, perhaps, but why are we doing all of this in general? Like, what is this for? We find value in the work we do, of course, but we are doing this for money. And I think salespeople really are motivated that way, and they need to be. And so there will be quality of work that will matter. And these things will keep them engaged and keep them excited when times are tough. Those things will matter, absolutely matter. But there's the nice thing with this is it's super clean. You're having meetings, you're having conversations, you're just talking about how can we help you hit your goals? How can we help you close your quarter? How can I get you rich? Super clean. And they resonate with this. And that's the, I think, opportunity that we have in this space over almost anybody else. Now, software sales, that you can do very well there, but it's a different acumen. It's a different type of person. They're not looking here. We're talking more, blue collar sales. I think when compared to people who would be in our industry, I don't know, circles, if you will, nobody can pay what we can pay. And that is our opportunity. Okay, so speaking of compensation structure, full commission versus salary and commission. We did some back and napkin math in the next slide to break it down. I think you can kind of go over that. I won't go through every last piece because this is the full commission is pretty self-explanatory. The salary plus commission is, that's choose your own adventure. There's all sorts of ways to package that. I give you an example on the next slide about how we do that. But this slide, we'll kind of just talk about the pros and cons, and we'll move into some of the dollars and cents. So full commission is so we wrote down less risk to your business. I disagree with that statement even on this slide, simply because it actually will be more, it appears to be less risk to your business. So we'll say the illusion of less risk to your business. And more potential upside for the salesperson. That is certainly true. And we'll show you that model. Higher failure rates for sure. Higher turnover, which is equivalent to failure rate, and risky. It's all sort of the same statement. The likelihood of failure is real there. I would say another con too is there's hidden fees here. It is very unlikely a full commission rep will come over and not want to draw, and that draw will go on for. So let's do this. They need $1,500 a week in a draw for 3 months. So they accumulate 18,000 roughly in draw. So they've got 3 months. They're into you for 18,000. They hit some sales. Yay! Now they start making commission back. That commission is supposed to go back to the house. Now they owe you 18K. But if you start paying them the 18K, like, well, I'm only making, I didn't start making $1,500 in commission in 90 days. I'm only making $750. So I'll give you back. They're salespeople, right? So they'll say, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 500 of my commission, but I still need the difference in a draw. Again, I've seen this play out so many times. The draw goes for a year. And because it's just this kind of like you're pushing and pulling, they leave, they're in you for 36K, and there that goes. And yeah, maybe you keep some business that they brought on in the process, but that doesn't feel like success to me. It just doesn't. So I apologize if I'm super down on this concept. I've just not seen it work. So maybe some people have. And if you have, and it must somewhere, because people would completely stop doing this if it wasn't working categorically. But over 15 samples of this I've seen, I've just not seen it work, not long term anyway. Salary plus commission, I'm an advocate for that. I think it's better money for you in the long run. It gives the salespeople the chance to develop properly and at a pace that's realistic, and especially if we're thinking about pulling people from sort of side industries, then you need to give them a bit of ramp period there. But there is certainly more upfront costs for you. Going back that whole investment, you found them through a recruiter, which you wouldn't find a commission rep through a recruiter. You're going to find them through just industry and putting yourself out there. So you're going to find them through a recruiter. So you're paying your 10 to 15,000 there. You're investing in 6 months on say 60K. So there's certainly a lot of money up front for these. So you really do want to make sure you're getting that higher right. But I don't mind that as a forcing function to make sure you're getting that higher right, and you're taking your time, and you're making the required, you're taking the analytical process and time to make that right decision on that right person or persons. Sidebar to this, we don't have it anywhere in the, but if you're hiring your first salesperson and you can somehow swing it, hire two. It's really difficult to get a measurement on how you are doing in terms of your coaching, what you're asking from them from a quota perspective, all of the things, when you just have a data point of one. If you really can swing it, do three. One of them will succeed, one of them will fail, and the other person will probably sit somewhere in the middle. When you have two, you don't know which two you've got. But I know that from a financial perspective is unreasonable for most companies. Quite frankly, so is hiring two. Ideally, you get one going, they start working, you see the model and the playbook that you're running is starting to work, and you bring that second one in because you trust the investment better. That first one, I get it. Honestly, for people that haven't done it, they're thinking about doing it right now. It's a pretty nerve-wracking experience. I can feel the nerves from when I started doing this for sure. It's yeah, scary. Okay, so dollars and cents. This could have changed. Maybe this is lower now. I feel like it should be, because paying sales reps 35 to 40% commission gross margin it's a killer to your business. It grows top line, but that's a vanity metric. We're looking for net. So at the end of the year, you're not making a lot on that account, depending on the complexity of the accounts they're bringing on after the dispatch costs that go into that and some of the other things. That's there's not a lot left over, but in the right type of account, the right environment, it's again, and if you do find that person that can sell on commission, they're motivated to do it because what you're offering is just a sweet spot for their knowledge set. And that's, again, going back to that very, very beginning about squeezing the niche. If you've got a really, so you move agriculture from New Jersey to LA. That's all you do. You just move that lane. That's your business. And you find a guy who wants to do full commission, or girl, and that's all they've ever done. That could be a good fit. That could be a great example of where that could be a good fit. So it all comes back to that squeezing the niche could allow you to make a hire here. So that might be your standard. Perhaps that's lower now. There's little fees you can take away, but at the end of the day, that's a lot to give back. Draws will be part of this deal often. So salary plus commission, the way I'd like to structure these is you give them a base salary, and then you take X amount of dollars per quarter that goes back to the house to ultimately cover that base salary. So it's sort of the mind similar to the full commission, but they've got to obviously get to that, call it, and I honestly, we've got to check these numbers, but let's call it 100K per quarter in sales. And if that pays back through gross margin, your annual salary, and maybe a little bit extra, because any salary you should add 12 to 15%. That's your true cost of that. You've got vacations and benefits and things like that. So just call it, in this case, you have a cost of about 70K base salary plus your 15%. So get the money back into the house on that quarterly basis, and then anything over them covering that, you'll pay them a smaller amount on the gross margin than they would otherwise get in a full baseline. So in this model, we've got sorry, I'm just trying to find the numbers here. Salesperson sells 2 million a year, gross margin making 40% of 400K, they would make 60. Yeah. Sorry, Liz, can we go to the next slide? I don't know if there's a summary. Oh, there is. Good. Thank you. So in these models, we use $2 million in annual revenue as the model, a 20% margin. The full commission person gets 160. The base plus commission gets 108. So in your, in this example, once they reach a certain critical mass, then they're actually making less money, or use a business, I think a better way to put it is making more money on them at that level on the 60K. So that, I think, is an important call out here too. So it's this long tail, and as actually time goes on, this delta widens even further. So it's just a matter of deciding what's right for you, your business, and obviously the people that you're bringing on. So that would be my these are the examples. These are one of hundreds. Like I said, make up your own version of what you think here, but this is just one that I've used in the past. And so for carriers, same logic applies. Standard for full commissions, 5% top line revenue, because obviously extrapolating margins on a transactional basis is pretty much impossible, especially if you're in the LTL space or something like that. So if you can do a gross margin because you're doing an owner operator model, perhaps maybe you can do something like that. Top line revenue seems to be something that has been fairly common, but otherwise you can use a similar baseline. One thing I would say with commissions, though, folks, is that make it super, super, super clear to your salespeople how much they're going to be making. Nothing is more frustrating than a sales commission that is a lot of math and algorithms to try to figure out how much you're making. Make it super, super, super clear so they know you can have the conversations, close this much more, and you'll get this much more. That's how, again, this is how you motivate salespeople. Also, pay commissions quarterly at the absolute longest. Even bi-weekly is better if you can swing it, but no less than quarterly. That's as long as you want to go. You need to keep people fed and incented. The nice thing with quarterly, I will say, it gives you a little bit more control over cash flow, but it also, the checks are much bigger and it has a bigger dopamine hit. So you give me a commission check every 2 weeks for, I don't know, $1,000, but you give me a commission check every quarter for $6,000. It just feels better. Okay. So we talked about things to cover when training. Who are you? What do you do? What are you amazing at? And what don't you do? Your ideal customer, same thing. Where are they? Who are they? What do they do? Kind of relates to that first point. And then your expectation. So at Rose Rocket, we have a 30, 60, 90. This is what we expect from you. This is what we hope you accomplish. It's not necessarily revenue related. And we'll talk a little bit about at the last slide about how we want to maybe think about what we want from people in at some period of time. I think one opportunity for you to attract salespeople, especially in transportation. So if you are going to stick with transportation, what transportation salespeople generally do not get is lead generation support. So we talked about pulling from out of industry. You can say, what I've got for you is the opportunity to make more money than you're making today. Our top end is higher than top ends in most any other space. I've got you there. So we can do that. If pulling from in industry, what you can say is, we generate leads for you. You don't have to hunt. We will generate the leads, we will deliver them to you, or we'll co-develop leads. We will support you in your prospecting efforts. Prospecting in this space is so difficult. And so whatever you can do to take off some of the prospecting burden, so your salespeople are spending time closing deals, that is a massive, massive selling point to a salesperson, mixed with the technology that you all have access to through Rose Rocket, being able to give them tools for visibility and all the stuff that you can. So that mixed with some prospecting help is incredible if you can do that. So how do we do that? Some of the tools, process versus cadence. I think in small businesses, we don't need to think overly hard about process, although process will come organically as a relationship to cadence. So cadence being, let's do a sales stand-up at 9:30 every Monday morning or 8:30 every Monday morning. Tell me, Mr. Salesperson, Mrs. Salesperson, what are your top 5 objectives for this week? That's it. Just give me what those are and why. So you want to have a meeting with this person. You want to get a yes or no on this business. You want to do this. And why are you doing that? How does that help you move further? How does that help you move your way toward the goal of making $350,000 by 2023? So that's kind of your cadence. And then a Friday afternoon, coaching pipeline review for an hour and a half, something like that. That is the difference. Process is I think something that will long tail out of the cadence, but early days, over processing salespeople is overburdening them a bit anyway, and it's overburdening to you too. It's like, let the process find itself, but have a cadence in which people can expect on what they're doing. Right tools, CRMs. There's tons of free CRMs. How can they stay organized with their leads? I mean, Excel can honestly be that. It's not ideal, but it's not the worst. Better than pen and paper. How are you gonna get databases? Like how are you gonna find the customers? Overseas outsourcing for lead gen. I've done that before really effectively. That can work well. Again, it's an investment, but this whole thing is, MailChimp, so automatic email campaigns, all the stuff you can do to build up automation where your salespeople can be spending the most of their time closing is the best value that you can bring to your business, and also an incredible way to attract salespeople. Talk to a salesperson and say, I'll tell you what, I'll give you, 3 leads a day. I don't think you could actually do that, but 3 leads a day. You just go and we'll set the meetings, and you just have to go make those meetings, close the business, get paid. Because in this space, the beautiful thing for salespeople in this space is close the deal, send it over to operations, get out of the way. That's amazing. And reoccurring revenue, by the way. It's an incredible opportunity for the right person, by the way. I know I'm getting kind of frothy about it, but this is a great business for the right kind of salespeople. So that's the pitch. So everything you can do to give them a lot on that front side, that top of pipeline, that's going to go a long, long, long way. You don't always, and you won't always be able to do that. And I've seen salespeople have good success who are phenomenal hunters, own that part of the business, but maybe you can support them. Maybe over a year-long period, you can buttress that with, okay, we're going to start with some paid leads. Maybe we'll do a new website. We're going to do we'll outsource some work, and we'll do some cold calling for you. So I think, it doesn't have to be like day zero, the whole system is set up. Kind of do it with them, understand where their strengths and weaknesses are, and see if you can kind of support them. Maybe they struggle closing. I've had that. I've had amazing salespeople that are excellent farmers, hunters, in terms of like finding leads, getting that there. They're really good at managing accounts as well, but kind of sucked at closing. So I mean, at that point, they would bring me in and I would close the deal because that's probably my strongest suit. I'm not great at the other two, and so that worked well for our business. And maybe in some other ways, you have people who are not that great at managing the accounts. And so you perhaps are. The customer relationship is really strong for you, so you can lean in and take that part of the business on. There's very, very, very few salespeople, if any, that are exceptional at prospecting, closing, managing accounts. That's a unicorn. So you're like, if you can get 2 out of 3, you're doing really well. So, what should we be thinking about in terms of salespeople from a milestone perspective? So, in the first 6 months, you're not really looking for revenue. Hopefully, you get some, but in some ways, hopefully you don't. In that, if a salesperson comes on and has a super kind of lucky, I'm coming from out of industry, I called one of my old customers because they buy packaging, but they also ship freight, and they gave me 10 truckloads a day. Holy, that's great. Nice deal. The salesperson, they kind of will flow into that as like, this is how you do it. This is how it's done. I'll tell you what's an amazing exercise. They go in, they get that deal, they lose the deal because operations drops the ball. Because look, it's part of the business. It's part of our industry. And getting to know like, wow, this isn't as easy as I thought. There is a lot of components to this business. That closing is half the deal. Execution, which is a salesperson I have actually very little control over of the operation side, is also a massive part of the deal. So there's almost like, again, it's about building muscles in the first 6 months. And the way you can measure quantifiably is look at pipeline creation. So if the goal is, what I'm looking for you to do is close, $300,000 in net new business every quarter. Do they have a pipeline at month 6 that will allow them to make their Q3 or their month 6 to 9 quarter, or have a good shot at it? I probably wouldn't be fussed if they didn't hit that quarter. But by year 1, you're looking for them to be giving probably close to quota, probably a little bit less than you would hope for or expected, because the ramp time here is slow. It's this, and then it starts to really, it'll hockey stick on them after a while. There's compound effect here. That first year and a half is really tough. And so we're looking for people who are still enthusiastic, are enjoying working here, are continuing to think positively and openly about all the different opportunities that are there. They're just still enthusiastic. That would be the way I would like almost just say it, period. And they're starting to make meaningful impact on the revenue. Year 2, got to be hitting those goals. You've invested a lot of money at this point. You should be starting to look at payback period at this point. They should be close to roughly that money you front loaded in those first 6 months. You should start seeing that coming back by now. And then really year 2 to year 5, that's where you help them make that commitment, and you see them the path. You're like, if you continue to do what you're doing now, you will hit that 350 to 500,000 a year mark because we can see it. The quarters are there. The pipeline's projecting out, ahead of time. They're not cold calling as much. They're getting more referrals. They're working with the accounts. They had to expand those accounts and meet new people who are directly related to those accounts. That's what you'll start seeing it year two. But I think the call out here is that's 2 years. So there's a lot of investment and a lot of work that goes into. So make sure we're figuring out the right people. Can this happen sooner? 100%. Can it take longer? 100%. This is how I would think about this, though, from realistically managing how this might go. So I think that's it.
Great. Thank you. I believe we're just at 1 p.m. now. Thank you again,
exactly.
everyone, for coming to today's webinar with Justin. Thank you, Justin, for presenting everything. In case anyone missed it, we will be sharing a recording of this webinar via email. It'll probably come in the next hour or two, definitely before end of day. Justin's email is here on the last slide. It's justin.b@roserocket.com. The recording will be coming from me. So if you forgot Justin's email or have any other questions, feel free to respond. Always happy to help. Again, thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon.